I bet you thought we were done with gem dragons for this month, but no. Using my sage powers, I've delved into the deleted archives of Wizards of the Coast and retrieved from the Ether the listing for the 3.5 edition Obsidian Dragon, thanks to a few strident requests from devoted fans. I'll not be covering the unusual dragons related to silver dragons and also called Obsidian dragons from the Greyhawk world setting, as they're not related to gem dragons and are only found on that world. They're basically just a silver dragon variant, a mutation if you will. Finding the real Obsidian dragons is not easy though. Look in vain for the lair of the Obsidian Dragon, my friend, for you will rarely find it on any world of the prime material plane. But the same can't be said for the dragons themselves, as they can turn up just about anywhere and on any world that they care to, which makes them one of the most elusive of the fabled neutral-aligned gem dragons. With only a single web article published in 2003, written by Scott Brosius and Mark A. Gindra to answer our questions, I may have to engage in a little bit of speculation and spin a few ways to make best use of the Obsidian Dragon in the Forgotten Realms, and indeed any world you care to place them on in the entire Dungeons & Dragons multiverse. Obsidian Dragons, while the most intelligent of the gem dragons, are also the most vicious. Typically of neutral evil alignment, they are extremely haughty, anger easily, and like to toy with their prey before finishing them off. These are also one of the more powerful psionic dragons, with minds every bit as formidable as fangs, claws, and incendiary breath. Yes, they breathe fire, but we will be talking about that in just a moment. So, make yourself comfortable, grab yourself a tasty beverage. We're about to get deeply nerdy. When first hatched from their lustrous pitch black eggs, the small wormlings have scales that are grey, rough to the touch, and quite well defined. Then, as they begin to hunt and explore the world beyond their hidden nest, the scales become darker and progressively smoother, seeming to blend together until their remarkable hide appears as smooth, lustrous, and pitch black as the stone they're named after. Also, it just so happens that the overlapping scales tend to form razor-sharp edges where the joints come together. Again, another trait of the obsidian stone is its exceptionally sharp, glass-like edges. However, the real edge of this breed of dragon is their minds. Even when first hatched, they have an intelligence of 15, and this increases as they age and grow. By the time they become adults, their intelligence is an astounding 25. And it doesn't stop there. While none have ever been observed on the planet Toril, a great worm obsidian dragon would potentially reach godlike levels of intellect with a score of up to 37. This is almost indescribably smart. It is intelligent enough to be invited into the infernal palace of Asmodeus to enjoy a challenging game of wits and perhaps help him with particularly complex and difficult schemes in exchange for simply ridiculous mountains of wealth. Asmodeus would not even attempt to pull any entrapping contract shenanigans with such a creature, as doing so would undoubtedly backfire on him considerably. Am I hinting very strongly that the Great Worm Obsidian Dragon is a nigh unbeatable foe? No. I'm outright telling you this is the case, so the only way left to beat them is to ensure they never live long enough to reach their full potential. Of course, this occurs to them about 3 minutes after they have hatched, and so they immediately make use of their innate ability to pass instantly between the material plane and the inner planes, vanishing from the world and into the remote and lethal inferno of the elemental plane of fire, or vice versa. They then make their way to the mountains of coal, where great numbers of their kind establish lairs for themselves and range out from there, across the planar borders into countless different worlds of the prime material plane, building a mental catalogue of suitable hunting grounds and interesting locations to seek treasure and magical knowledge. On prime worlds, they will always gravitate towards volcanic zones, as they are perfectly able to survive in the extreme environment of a churning caldera, slipping through the mists of vented gases, often flying just ahead of the devastating lava flows, snapping up fleeing animals and immolating villages in their path, the lava leaving behind no evidence the dragon was ever there. The dragon uses this extreme heat to bring its entire body to nearly incandescent temperatures, so that even if you can get within striking distance before jets of flame breath get you, the radiating heat will boil your flesh within your armor. The Great Worm Obsidian Dragons become so adept at planar travel, and their understanding becomes such that they are able to actually generate their own demiplanes using their impressive psychic power alone. There are reports from one obscure necromantic skull tome I listened to deep in the Candlekeep crypts and under the watchful eye of the dragon spirit down there, which told of a great epidemic of terrible nightmares, where a demon dragon, like the heart of a star cloaked in the blackness of the night sky, seemed to usurp the sleeper's power of imagination, stealing their dreams, as it were, to make a nightmare realm all for itself. Can you imagine the panic spreading among the living people as they awaken to find that they all experienced the same thing? In truth, the dragon did enter their dreams within the colour wall of the ethereal plane, located at the boundary of border and deep ethereal zones. In such rare cases, this sort of thing will seem like a direct challenge to any gold dragon in the vicinity of those dreamers, which can result in conflicts, but green dragons, who may also manipulate the dreams of mortal folks near its lair, will know better to get involved and just leave well enough alone. For whatever reason, invoking the attention of an obsidian dragon is therefore highly dangerous. They tend to torment other creatures, mostly just to amuse themselves. So my advice, if you gain their attention, is to seek out some high alpine region or head as far south or north as you can until you reach the lands of endless ice, as obsidian dragons have an aversion to the deep cold of such places, taking double damage from any cold-based attacks and suffering great discomfort in frigid conditions. Keep in mind though, this will probably only work with adult dragons or younger. The more ancient dragons will simply cloak themselves in a magical aura of heat and plane shift away the moment they're exposed to the chill directly. A truly determined foe may use some sort of dimensional anchor enchantment on them to prevent their escape, at which point the dragon will erupt into a terrible rage and fight its captor to the death. Excellent flyers in young age, slightly more clumsy as they get older, the dragon will keep its distance and soften up the target by unleashing breath weapon attacks in the form of great cones of fire, its eyes blazing red orbs and mouth incandescently hot, just adding to that highly intimidating appearance. It will deliberately set fire to any material that will release great plumes of smoke and ash, as it can use these for enhanced cover from those trying to target it with ranged counterattacks. Meanwhile, it's hurling fireballs and using its mental power to manifest lines of white fire in a 20-foot radius anywhere it can see within around 400 feet from its location. White fire deals 5d4 damage to any who fail a dexterity saving throw and will set fire to any combustible material, even melting metals with a low melting point such as lead, gold and such. If they do manage to break the lock of their plan of travel and are of an ancient age category, they can simply snatch up a victim and transport them directly to the plane of elemental fire, retreating to simply watch their victim burn to a screaming crisp in the unquenchable fires. A good way to introduce the obsidian dragon to your players is to have them plane shift from deep within the plane of fire and be so hot their entire body is glowing brightly. Then as they cool, their hide darkens gradually to the deep, lustrous black, just like lava freshly flowing from a volcano, or some blacksmith's creation cooling from the heart of the forge. Getting anywhere nearer than 10 feet of the dragon while it's glowing like that is going to hurt, but not too much. But it will give the dragon a moment to take stock of its surroundings without having to worry about getting a sudden flurry of critical strikes from a highly trained monk, for example. That being said, the obsidian dragons do not shy away from combat. They'll make a quick assessment of the opposition and determine within a couple of rounds whether they can overpower their foes easily. If not, they retreat to formulate an ambush or to avoid very powerful foes. They also learn as they age to marshal their most abundant resource, fire elementals, which they can use in unique alien extraplanar magic to safely contain within themselves and unleash like a troop transport by simply breathing them out along with its cone of its own breath weapon. You can imagine the shock of the players when the cone of flames leaves behind a small mob of minor fire elementals, perhaps even creatures like the miscreant Magmans racing about happily setting fire to everything they can. It is a rare tactic for the obsidian dragon to snatch an enemy back to its own demiplane to fight them, but there would be a very good reason for the dragon to do so. I don't know what that is. I would personally restrict this sort of tactic for when you want to snatch away a nearly dead player character and hold them captive and alive, rather than just reducing them to a smoking pile of ash and a pair of scorched boots. Always provide some means for other characters to somehow get to the dragon's personal demiplane in that case. It's just another encounter location after all. But if they decide not to, have the player roll up a new character right away and get them back into the game. Or better yet, always have an NPC on hand that a player can take over for a little while if their character is cut off from the action for an extended period of time, as nobody likes to sit around with nothing to do. That's just a general good rule of thumb. Why would the obsidian dragon capture a character rather than kill them outright? Well, amusement, arrogance, or just a divide and conquer strategy, but it may be that the hyper-intelligent dragon is conducting a horrific experiments to try and create its own force of elementally infused minions, both to protect its horde while it's away from the office, or as a squad of elemental stormtroopers that can effectively gate into its location whenever it runs into more opposition than it expected. In combat, the Obsidian Dragon makes great use of its psychic abilities. And before you worry too much about handling this in 5th edition, let me just provide the easiest method to handle it. While a number of monsters like Mind Flayers have been able to use their psionic abilities since 5th edition launch, this has largely taken the form of being able to cast spells without material, verbal, or somatic components, rather than a discrete subsystem of rules. I'm actually fine with this. It makes perfect sense to me that a spellcaster facing off against a mind mage is going to have real problems countering the psionic manifestations, not because they can't spell or counterspell them, but because they can't see any material, verbal, or somatic components which clue them into what the psychic is about to unleash. And when you think about that for a moment, that is exactly the advantage a powerful psychic should have. The psychic is much more like a stealth sorcerer than anything else, so play them that way. Looking at the traditional array of psionic powers the dragon has, they're all easily to convert to existing spell listings. Ectoplasmic Wall is close enough to the web spell. The Firefall manifestation causes an existing source of flame to erupt in a sudden flare of power that erupts in a brilliantly bright hemispherical plume that requires all creatures in a 60-foot radius to make a dexterity saving throw or take 5d6 fire damage and catch on fire. Also, creatures within 120 feet of the plume must make a wisdom saving throw or become blinded for 1d4 plus 1 rounds. Save ends. Just set the save DC based on the challenge rating you want for your dragon. Easy peasy. From a young age, Obsidian Dragons can cast Fireball, so this just seems like they have learned how to use the Fireball to erupt out of any available fire in the immediate area, something a Master of Flames should be able to do, really. Some of the more obscure psionic powers of the ancient Obsidian Dragons transform them into excellent recurring enemies, such as the psychic power called Mind Store. Basically, the dragon manifests a storage crystal that, on its physical death, safely contains the dragon's living mind and essence. This crystal should be located back on the elemental planes, or within the dragon's own demiplane, of course, and it prevents the dragon's body being either resurrected or transformed into something like a Dracolich, which will really annoy the cult of the dragon. This storage crystal is not inert, it becomes the new body of the dragon, who floats around in it, very annoyed for a while, still able to use telekinesis and telepathy to interact with its surroundings, as it slowly pulls either ectoplasm from the astral plane or protomatter from the ethereal plane into its location over the next 10 days and constructs a new draconic body for itself to transfer back into. During this process, the dragon is highly vulnerable though, as anything destroying that body will also kill the contained mind of the dragon, killing it permanently. So it's a psychic phylactery. Easy peasy. Some good guidelines for quick and dirty use of psionic powers is they are similar to magic but almost impossible to counterspell. They can be dispelled if they're ongoing. They usually have a range of no greater than 120 feet or so they require saving throws, and they are just usually variants of existing arcane or divine spells anyway. Obsidian Dragons can cloak themselves in psychic mage armor, manifest scorching rays, lots of different fire effects. I'll do something I rarely do and put a link in the video description text below to the D&D wiki page, which lists all the Psion powers from 3.5 edition, so you can just see what they do and figure out your own conversions. It's really not that hard. Just remember to always choose the saving throws and damage limits based on the dragon's challenge rating, and you can't go wrong. For physical stats, the Obsidian Dragon is most similar in size and power to the Bronze Dragon. A Red Dragon would easily kick their tail if it was nothing but a straight-up physical brawl. But of course, with the Obsidian Dragon, they would outsmart the Red Dragon every single time, and their use of both arcane spells and psychic powers is more than a match for most other dragons. Even Gold Dragons respect just how dangerous Obsidian Dragons can be and tend to give them a wide berth. It might be different if the Obsidian Dragons were more active on Prime Material worlds, but since they're not, the Gold Dragons tend to deal with the consequences of their infrequent visits and not the root cause. Obsidian Dragons keep lairs stocked with whatever tickles their fancy. They're more likely to rest in a lake of molten gold rather than a pile of treasure. They'll mount trophies of all kinds on moulded plinths of obsidian, and of course favour objects that are completely immune to fire and heat, so they're unlikely to keep books and scrolls and other traditional magic items. In any case, they are intelligent enough to simply memorize whatever they read once and don't need to ever read a book or scroll again. If they do, for whatever reason, remain on a Prime Material world for an extended period of time, their regional effects manifests as increased seismic activity, so earth tremors, geothermal features becoming more active after many thousands of years of dormancy, and an increased severity to any outbreaks of fire either in towns or forests within 6 miles of their location. Certainly one of the more obscure and formidable gem dragons. Thanks for the request. My name is AJ Pickett and I make videos about RPG lore, monsters and exotic locations in the D&D multiverse. Thanks for joining me, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.